The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Stocks in Asia extended a slide on Wall Street Wednesday as President Donald Trump looks set to press ahead with a whopping 104% tariffs on Chinese goods, pummeling oil prices to four-year lows as global recession fears grip financial markets. Overnight, Washington confirmed 104% duties on imports from China would take effect after midnight on Wednesday. China's blue chip slipped 1.2%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng tumbled 3% at the open. Japan's Nikkei tumbled 4% after rallying 6% on Wednesday on hopes that Tokyo may get some trade deal with the U.S. Taiwanese stocks also fell 1.7%, even though the government activated a $15 billion stabilization fund on U.S. President Trump's singling out Taiwanese chip giant TSMC. Late on Tuesday, Trump said China was manipulating currency to protect against tariffs, but he thought China would make a deal at some point. The U.S. dollar fell against safe haven currencies, but the offshore yuan hit a record low of $7.42 per dollar overnight. Oil prices dived over 3% on Wednesday on concerns about demand from China. Brent futures plunged to $60.74 a barrel, while U.S. crude futures also tumbled to $57.48 per barrel. Gold struggled to regain its upward momentum, and it's back above $3,000 per ounce after hitting its lowest in a month. U.S. Trade Representative Greer said on Tuesday that exemptions to President Trump's global tariffs are not expected in the near term. The trade representative who oversees the implementation of the tariffs also said there is no particular timeline for trade negotiations. Trump has already implemented a 10% tariff on almost all imports to the world's largest consumer market and targeted tariffs of up to 50% on many trading partners, taking effect today, Wednesday. Trump's administration has set up negotiations with those two export-dependent countries, which could be hammered by a thicket of country and product-specific tariffs. Dozens of other governments have reached out as well, and Vietnam and Indonesia have offered to cut tariffs on some U.S. imports. Greer defended the Trump administration's decision to apply that 10% tariff on Australia, despite a free trade agreement, citing the country's ban on imports of U.S. beef and pork.
Senator, the president has been clear with me and with others that he does not intend to have exclusions and exemptions, especially given the nature of the action. If you have Swiss cheese in the action, it can undermine the overall point, which is to get rid of the deficit, achieve reciprocity. Other countries signaled that they'd like to find a path forward on reciprocity. China has not said that. And we will see where that goes. I think we need to work with our closest friends to make sure that we have trading arrangements that work. And if the Chinese are open, we'll see what. But they haven't signaled that at all. So I don't think that's in the very near term with China. Obviously, we want to have more market access in Japan. For us, we feel like we could have more and better agricultural market access. So, Senator, we've already had many countries, many of our markets, explain that they are not going to retaliate against the United States. And in fact, Vietnam, for example, they've lowered their tariffs already on cherries. They've lowered them on almonds and apples, things I know are important to the Pacific Northwest. And this is exactly the right direction that we want to go in. So the president has indicated that he's willing to negotiate with parties that want to pursue reciprocal trade with the United States. We don't have any particular timeline set on that because, as you pointed out, Senator, the outcome is more important than setting something artificially for us. What I can say is I'm moving as quickly as possible, and a lot of these countries are moving very quickly, and we're working on the weekends, we're working at night as folks want to engage on this.
Well, U.S. President Trump did accuse China of manipulating its currency to offset the impact of U.S. tariffs. During an event at the National Republican Congressional Committee, Trump announced he would introduce tariffs on pharmaceuticals as well. On top of these, Trump said he told chipmaker Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company it would pay a tax of up to 100% if it didn't build its plants in the United States, then proceeded to criticize former President Joe Biden's administration for providing a $6.6 billion grant to TSMC's unit for semiconductor production in Phoenix, Arizona.
I gave them no money. Great company, most powerful in the world, biggest chip company in the world. They're spending $200 billion in Arizona, building one of the biggest plants in the world. And that's without money. All I did is say, if you don't build your plant here, you're going to pay a big tax, 25, maybe 50, maybe 75, maybe 100%. We have to do, we're going to tariff our pharmaceuticals. And once we do that, they're going to come rushing back into our country because we're the big market. The advantage we have over everybody is that we're the big market. So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals. Right now, China's paying a 104% tariff. Think of it, 104%. Now, it sounds ridiculous, but they charged us for many items 100%, 125%. Many countries have. They've ripped us off left and right. Until they make a deal with us, that's what it's going to be. I think they'll make a deal at some point. China will. They want to make a deal. They really do. They want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get it started because they're proud people. Today, it was announced that China is reducing its currency. Did you see that? Big, big. In other words, they're going to make up for it. They got every trick in the book. I'll tell you, they are great. You got to hand it to them. You got to hand it to them. They're manipulating their currency today as an offset against the tariffs. Not supposed to do that. The game isn't supposed to be played that way. It makes it very hard for us. But in the end, it's not good because they have to buy oil. See, we don't need oil. We don't need oil and gas. We have more than any other country. They have to buy it. That's where it hurts them when they do that. It costs them twice as much.
Well, U.S. President Trump also signed executive orders to boost coal production, counter to global efforts to curb carbon emissions.
Now, under the executive order that I will sign in a few moments, we're slashing unnecessary regulations that targeted the beautiful clean coal. We will rapidly expedite leases for coal mining on federal lands, and these two gentlemen are going to do a real job of it. You've already started. And we'll streamline permitting. We will end the government bias against coal, and we're going to unlock the sweeping authorities of Defense Production Act, the Defense Production Act, to turbocharge coal mining in America.
Shares in U.S. coal producers Peabody and Core Natural Resources each shot up about 9% after the news. Still, it is uncertain what demand there is for any greater U.S. coal output, with hundreds of domestic coal-burning plants having closed this decade on cheaper fuels and concerns about future regulations, even if Trump's administration dismantles current ones. Coal-burning plants generate less than 20% of U.S. electricity, a drop from 50% in the year 2000. That's according to the Energy Information Administration, as fracking and other drilling techniques have hiked production of natural gas. Growth in solar and wind power has also caused a cut to coal use. Meanwhile, a legal victory for the Associated Press. A federal judge has ordered the White House to lift its restrictions on AP journalists. The Trump administration banned the news agency from the Oval Office, Air Force One, and the president's events at the White House over its refusal to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. But the judge says the government should not single out AP just because its views differ with President Trump's. U.S. media giant Comcast Corp will build its first Universal theme park and resort in Europe in Bedford, north of London. That's opening in 2031. The British government said on Wednesday the park, Universal Studios Park, will create 20,000 jobs during construction and a further 8,000 jobs across the hospitality and creative industries when it opens. It is expected to attract 8.5 million visitors in its first year, a number currently only exceeded in Europe by Disneyland Paris. Universal Studios has 5 resorts and parks in the U.S. States of California and Florida, as well as Singapore, Japan, and China, offering rides and attractions based on Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, and other movie franchises. You have to pause for a few reminders, but the biggest business stories from around the country and the market's closing date are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back to Business Brief. The Philippines may be in a better position than its neighbors to weather a global trade storm, but the Asian Development Bank underscores the need for more proactive reforms. Let's get details from our correspondent Sujin Kim, who joins us on the line. Sujin, go ahead.
Raine, the Asian Development Bank is urging the Philippines and its neighbors to deepen inter-regional integration amid growing uncertainty over the effects of sweeping new U.S. tariffs. While the new U.S. trade measures are expected to reduce Asia-Pacific growth by up to 1 percentage point next year, the Philippines is seen to be in a relatively strong position to withstand external shocks, citing only 3.4% of Philippine GDP is directly tied to U.S. final demand, meaning 97% of the economy is insulated from the direct impact of the trade restrictions. The semiconductor sector, which accounts for 60% of Philippine exports, remains exempt from the new tariffs, preserving one of the country's most resilient growth engines. Electronic shipments driven by global AI demand continue to expand and are a key driver of economic momentum across the region. To capitalize on this momentum, the ADB highlighted the need for proactive reforms to address infrastructure bottlenecks, strengthen logistics, and enhance the investment climate. It also called for faster implementation of regional trade agreements like the RCEP and renewed efforts to secure bilateral free trade deals with major partners. The ADB revised their growth forecast for the Philippines downward to 6.0% this year from a previous 6.2%, citing lower than expected growth turnout in the fourth quarter of last year. And those are latest updates from Mandaluyong City. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Sujin Kim. The solution to war is not more war, but only peace. That assertion from President Bongbong Marcos as he leads the commemoration of Araw ng Kagitingan or Day of Valor in Pilar, Bataan. He says the lessons of the past must serve as guide for the future.
We celebrate the lessons that have been learned through this very terrible hardship and very terrible experience. The lessons that we learn are that the solution to war is not more war, and that the solution to war is only peace. An honorable peace that is arrived at by the different parties involved in having a hand and a voice in achieving that peace. Peace cannot be attained by one person, by one country alone. And that we have to bring together all the parties that are involved. These are the lessons that we hope to have learned.
Meanwhile, Filipino exporters, especially small businesses, could take a direct hit from retaliatory measures triggered by the U.S.'s sweeping tariffs. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry says agriculture and food processing sectors are among the most vulnerable as countries consider their own tariff countermoves. While the U.S. is yet to release a detailed list of affected products, PCCI warns that Filipino food, agricultural goods, and electronics could be targeted, all major exports for the Philippines. The group is monitoring developments closely, including the responses of neighboring countries, and is urging the government to outline its next steps. PCCI Chair George Barcelon previously told the Bilyonaryo News Channel's Trade Talks that while they remain guardedly optimistic, the escalating trade tensions pose serious risks to Filipino exporters. In view of the ongoing trade wars, Philippine exporters with single-digit margins could be wiped out. Management Association of the Philippines warns that even a 17% tariff imposed by the U.S. could have a damaging impact on Philippine exporters, despite being one of the lowest in the region.
You know what the reality is? 17%. Some people said, hey, 17% is not bad compared to 46%. But I'm sorry, if you're a businessman and your net profit margin is not 17%, and you know, some businesses, you're talking single-digit net profit margins, a 17% levy is going to take you under.
That's
so that's really going to hit hard.
Okay.
In an interview with the Bilyonaryo news channel, MAP says it is pushing for the formation of an economic security council to manage the national response forces like the escalating tariff war led by U.S. President Trump. The council plans to involve in strategic discussions the businesses expected to be affected by the tariffs.
The recommendation of MAP is really get a group together that is developing a playbook, running analysis, running scenarios, doing data, and says if we gave this up, it's all going to be about trade-offs. Certain industries will be affected in a bigger way. So in a sense, you need to prioritize. If there's going to be action on semicon, on electronics, then the guys there, SAP, should be on the table to discuss what are the challenges to them.
The Philippines' dollar reserves slipped in March but remain strong enough to weather external shocks amid growing global trade tensions. Latest data from Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas showed gross international reserves, or GIR, stood at $106.2 billion at the end of March, down 1% from $107.4 billion in February. The BSP attributes the decline to the national government's foreign debt payments, but despite the dip, the central bank says the country's reserves remain a robust external liquidity buffer equivalent to almost 7 months' worth of imports. From dollar reserves to property demand, now despite global uncertainties, signs of resilience are starting to emerge in the Philippine real estate sector. Lee Chu Property Consultants reports that condominium demand rose 14% in the first quarter of 2025, pointing to a modest recovery in the residential market. The firm credits recent policy rate cuts and developer promotions for boosting buyer interest. Still, LPC strikes a cautious tone, warning that recent volatility in global markets could slow momentum later this year. The Office of Civil Defense guarantees aid for residents affected by the eruption of Mount Canlaon in Negros Island. On Bilyonaryo News Channel, OCD spokesperson Chris Bendijo shared the agency has prepositioned some 12,000 face masks in affected areas.
The necessary consequence of ashfall would be contamination of our water resources. Hence, there is really a significant need for water filtration. For purposes of water filtration, just to give you some numbers, from February 6 to April 7, a total of 160,000 liters for potable water has been processed or filtered and processed. Regarding food items, our DSWD has ready items, yung kanilang mga warehousing. They have already put up the system that they are ready to deploy at any given time around 200,000 food packs. So with respect to the deployment of food packs, this is handled by DSWD. And I'll verify, but I'm pretty sure that they have already deployed this already.
They have also distributed food and medicine and deployed water rationing trucks.
In terms of the actions done for the OCD Task Force Canlaon, again, you're correct. All preemptive measures really benefited us. The fact that we asked our citizens to stay in the evacuation centers, I guess the results would be, and we're still hoping that this will be confirmed. We have 0 casualty with the recent eruption. So I think the preemptive measures are really effective. Now, as to the task force created by the president, this looks to the long term as to what solutions can be done, because his comment is that it's very clear. This cannot happen every single time Mount Canlaon will erupt.
Finally, former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque denies being the source of a video accusing President Bongbong Marcos of drug use. During a House hearing, vlogger Pebbles Cunanan claimed Roque spoke about releasing the video last year, even saying he could bring down a government. Roque calls her affidavit baseless.
Sabi niyang live video kung saan nagkaroon ng premiere ang pulveronic video sa Vancouver. Kung ikaw ay okay na dyan at lahat ng gusto mo ay nabibigay naman, sana wag ka na lang manira ng iba.
Roque believes the House inquiry on the spread of fake news could strengthen his asylum bid in the Netherlands. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Always on time.